When I was younger, around 14 or 15 years old, my family used to camp at a state park. Every night, my friend and I would walk through the woods. We called this the ritual. On this particular night, we decided to walk farther into the woods than usual. We had flashlights, but we liked to try and navigate through the woods with them turned off. We were about half a mile from the nearest campsite when we heard soft whispering behind us. We quickly turned on our flashlights and spun around, but we didn't see anything. So we kept walking, and we heard it again. This time we stopped and looked around before deciding to head back to our campsite. Then we saw what was whispering. It was a lady crawling on the ground, whispering random words. She was wearing dark clothes and was covered in dirt. When she saw that we noticed her, she stood up and said she was looking for her campsite. We ended up walking her back to the campground and tried to help her find her group. It turned out she was just super drunk or high and got lost trying to find a bathroom. Her friends hadn't even noticed she was missing. If we hadn't gone that far into the woods, she would have been lost all night. I worked the night shift in a dementia ward for 4 years. It was never really quiet, no matter how late. One night, I was with another nurse and we both heard someone say, "Excuse me." The voice was loud enough that we both turned around right away, but no one was there. We checked the rooms and found the resident who always said that, but she was sleeping by herself and hadn't moved. Other nights we would hear whistling coming from somewhere in the hall. It never sounded the same. Sometimes it was a low tune. Sometimes it drifted through different parts of the ward. Every time we checked on the residents, and every time everyone was asleep, doors shut, nothing out of place. One nurse even caught the sound on video, but watching it later didn't help. It just made it feel more real. The feeling that someone was there or watching stayed with us all night. When the whistling started, we would freeze and listen, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Sometimes it sounded so close, we expected to see someone in front of us when we rounded the corner. But there was never anybody there. I've never gotten used to it, and every time I remember those nights I get chills. I never found out who or what was behind the voice or the whistling. I'm not sure I want to know. He was there in the kitchen when I turned the corner. At first I just thought he was another guest, the way he stood, the way he stared straight at me like he belonged there. His face was familiar, but at the same time totally wrong. He didn't move or speak. For a second we both just stood, watching each other in total silence. The light above the sink flickered. His reflection wobbled in the chrome appliances, but there was no sound except the quiet buzz of the fridge. Then, all at once, he seemed to float backward, his feet lifting from the tiles. He drifted right through the kitchen door, slow and smooth, head still turned toward me, never blinking, not once. I dropped what I was holding and ran after him, not thinking, just moving. By the time I reached the door, the hallway was empty. No footsteps, no echo, nothing. I checked every room, every shadow, but he was gone. The air felt colder, thicker, hard to breathe. Later, when I sat in the kitchen to calm myself, I kept seeing the spot where he'd been standing, convinced I'd catch the shape again in the corner of my eye. I never did. But sometimes, especially late, I'm sure I'll turn and he'll be there, watching, waiting, not even bothering to hide. I walked the empty building floor by floor, switching off lights one by one. The halls echoed with each step, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling like someone was following me. I reached the top, checked every room, and then heard it. someone slamming bathroom doors. They were rooms I knew I'd already cleared. The sound was sharp, angry, twice in a row. When I ran back, the rooms were empty, each door still swinging gently as if someone had just left. No one else was there. Not a single sign. Later that night, I watched the security monitors. Right after midnight, something strange happened. A glowing ball of light drifted out from the elevator, floated lazily across the empty lobby, then hovered behind the front desk. It moved back and forth for almost a minute, then flickered and vanished. There was no one in the camera's field, no headlights, no passing cars, nothing that could have made that light. Some nights, I stayed and listened. I heard voices in the empty back hallways, sometimes low, sometimes almost laughing. They'd fade when I'd walk by, only to return the moment I sat at the desk alone. I'd hear the click of a door or footsteps above, even after I'd double-checked every inch of the building for staff or guests and found none. I started leaving the last hallway lights on, just to push the silence a little further away. No one believed me at first, but every week something new would happen. A glimpse of a shadow on the stairs, a voice just beyond the glass, the feeling that someone was watching from right behind the back office door. This happened when I was in middle school, around 2002 or 2003. I was playing with a Ouija board with a friend on the bunk bed in my bedroom that I shared with my little sister. My friend and I were on the top bunk playing and connected with a spirit. Being skeptical and wanting to scare ourselves, we kept asking the spirit to prove to us that they were really there. My friend bravely volunteered to put a hair tie on her outstretched finger and hang her arm out over the edge of the bunk bed. We asked the spirit to lift up the hair tie, slide it off of her finger, and drop it to the ground. Whatever we were speaking to, they obliged, because this hair tie levitated off of my friend's finger and suspended itself in air for a few seconds before sliding off of her finger and dropping to the floor. My friend did not do anything to make the hair tie act the way it did. There's no way she could have done it because we tried to replicate it afterwards. Needless to say, it really spooky. We got the scare we were looking for. It wasn't too long after that my parents confiscated the Ouija board, and I haven't messed around with one since. Ouija boards give a new meaning to fuck around and find out. My family went camping every summer when I was growing up. We usually bounced between Virginia Beach, Assateague, and a god-awful place called Westmoreland. One trip, we were at Assateague near the beach and had 2 tents set up in different parts of the site. One night, my mum woke up and that woke me too. She sat upright but completely still. I looked at what she was staring at. In the moonlight, I saw the silhouette of what looked like an old woman with long, wiry hair looking into our tent. I was young, so it terrified me. I asked my mum what that was and who was outside. When I made noise, it spooked the old woman and she took off. That's when we realized it wasn't a woman at all. It was one of the feral ponies that live on the island. Our tent had been set up on one of their trails, and they were just walking down to the beach. It was creepy at first, but we learned quickly what we were really looking at. One night, a guest said he saw a bin of metal bar tools slide off the bar by itself. It hit the floor really hard and ended up far away, at least 5 feet from where it started. He looked shaken and wanted to leave as soon as possible. I could not figure out how it happened. Nothing even touched it. A different guest, 2 years later, had a similar thing happen in his room. I was nearby with his sister when we heard him yell. We ran to see what was wrong. He said his wallet and phone threw themselves off the table. They flew across the room and landed 5 feet away. While we were still talking, he set them back on the table. Then it happened again, right in front of us. I watched as both items slid quickly off the table and landed far away. All 3 of us just stood there, silent. It didn't make any sense. We checked everywhere for a reason, but there was nothing. After that, I always kept an eye on my things and never left anything near the edge of a table. I still think about those nights and wonder who or what really moved those things. When I was a little kid, my mum used to scratch my back by pushing her fingernails into it all over. It was a calming feeling that really helped whenever I was upset. One day, I was sitting at home playing with my dog on the couch when I got this strange feeling of sadness and sorrow. Suddenly, I felt that familiar nail scratching on my back. I got scared, but also strangely comforted. I wondered, what could be causing this? What felt like a few minutes was really only about 20 seconds. I snapped out of it, jumped off the couch, and checked my back. To my shock, I had scratch marks all over. About 30 minutes later, my sister called me. She told me our mum had passed away, about half an hour ago. The timing was too exact. That sudden wave of sorrow, then the scratching on my back. It all happened just as Mum died. I can't explain what happened. I don't know what to make of it or how to understand it. But I'll never forget that night. I lived on an old tobacco farm in Maryland. The property was huge and was sold off in separate parts. There were a few houses on the old farm and a long, narrow road connecting where I lived to a place called Quartersack. Growing up with the older kids in the neighborhood, we were very close and often teased each other about hauntings and ghost sightings. At the end of the road where I lived stood the biggest house on the farm, the one the Davidson family lived in. It was very old but remodeled. We always called it the White House because that's where the white farm owners lived. My brother and I thought the haunting stories were a joke. But one day I went exploring behind the house and stumbled upon a graveyard. The headstones were very old, all labeled Davidson, with relatives from generations back, some dating as early as 1830. That wasn't the scary part though, that was just background. Fast forward a bit to Christmas 1992, when we had a new Sony camcorder. That same year, new neighbors moved in across the farm, down the long dirt road. Across from the White House, behind some bushes but with no direct road connection, lived a family in what was known as the haunted house. It was very old. I became good friends with the new neighbor, who had an older brother into ghost hunting. He told me they lived in the slave house, and we explored the old barns together. They had a basement, locked by the previous owner, the Davidson family, and no one had the key. One night, when his parents weren't home, we broke into the basement. It looked like an old garage, but down the wooden stairs, to the left were 2 or 3 nooses and chains. Dirt stains and old clothes were scattered on the floor. We freaked out and ran back upstairs. A few days later, while filming in the barn with the camcorder at night, we noticed several nooses and chains hanging on the second level, swinging back and forth. Suddenly, we heard a deep, loud scream. We turned and ran, but kept recording. Watching the footage later, we saw orbs floating and dark outlines of feet, male or female, appearing near the nooses. That night changed everything.